The world witnessed the B-2 rocket, a new weapon, for the first time. How did this weapon, which would instill fear in the entire world, cause the beginning of the space age? How did America, through a secret operation, kidnap a Nazi officer and carry out the moon landing mission? You will be shocked while watching. Here is the secret rocket B-2 that changed the fate of the entire world and its incredible story. Rocket-related work began in the 1920s with initial testing done on cars. Then in small planes, then they said we can do better than this. Let's attach a rocket to a person. Of course they failed, but they kept trying. The book titled Interplanetary Space Rocket, written by Herman Obert, published in 1923, told a fictional story. It was discussed that launching a rocket into space would be possible with mathematics and that it would be a beautiful dream. This had caught the interest of Wernher von Braun. He had fallen in love with ideas about space. In the 1930s, he joined an American rocket group in Berlin who had dreams just like him. So where did this curiosity come from? The Treaty of Versailles, signed at the end of World War I in 1919, had tied Germany's hands because it imposed crushing conditions in terms of land, army, and economy. The army was disarmed, but new inventions were not bound by this agreement. The swift advancement of technology also sparked numerous novel concepts, including rocket technology. In 1861, Scottish priest and amateur astronomer William Leach wrote in his book The Majesty of God in the Heavens that one day humanity could travel among the stars with the help of advancing technology. Around the same time, science fiction writer Jules Verne also published a book called From the Earth to the Moon. In 1903, mathematician Konstantin Tsiolkovsky published a rocket equation in the Aviation magazine. The rocket equation explained the relationship between rocket speed and mass. It stated how fast the gas needed to exit from the propulsion system in order to generate lift force. Robert Goddard, inspired by some people, developed his own rocket theory and made history by launching the first liquid-fueled rocket in 1926. In essence, no one invents something on their own. Perhaps dozens of people contributed when something was invented. Let's come to von Braun, who will turn these into reality. After disarmament, Germany started to focus on new technologies. There was no restriction on new technologies for the German army. Meanwhile, von Braun had greatly developed his work on rockets, and this appetite was almost dazzling. Walter Dornberger was an officer in the German army at the time, responsible for the new rocket program, and von Braun's knowledge and appetite had caught his attention. In the fall of 1932, he took him under his wing and they began to work together. 3 months later, in January 1933, Nazi Party leader Hitler had become the new leader of Germany. Hitler and those close to him, aware of this new technology, were informed about rockets. They were told that if we succeed, we could transform rockets into bombs that could reach targets very quickly. This dream had appealed to Hitler. The work had now become serious. But von Braun's real dream from the very beginning was to make rockets that could go into space. But under the conditions of the time, this dream would remain in the background. In 1937, the Peenemünde test site was built in northern Germany. This area was selected for its secrecy and suitability for the planned tests. The world's first security camera was also used here. The closed-circuit television system was designed by German engineer Walter Brugge at the Peenemünde launch site to safely monitor the German V-2 rockets from a safe distance. Von Braun was hired as the technical director of missile development at PNM's test field in 1937. During World War II, he was at the helm of the German rocket industry. Within a few years, the facility had transformed into a virtual factory where 12,000 people worked. Primitive rocket tests using solid fuel were being conducted at the facility, but these were uncontrollable rockets. Once ignited, they would fly until the fuel was exhausted and fall uncontrollably. That was it. They had to switch to a system that ran on liquid fuel, a rocket with controllable thrust. They would have to start from scratch. If von Braun wanted to realize his dreams, he had to join the Nazi Party, and he joined the party in 1938. He would later be appointed as an SS officer. The person standing in the back in this picture is von Braun, and this is his only photograph taken in his SS uniform. In March 1939, on behalf of the rocket scientists gathered in Peenemünde, he was going to test the missiles they called the V2 Vengeance weapon. The rockets to be launched were taken to the center. It was surrounded by high walls. The rockets were brought to the launch ramp in a vertical manner through a rail system, because a rocket falling means it would mean an explosion of incredible magnitude, and no one would want to carry it. Meanwhile, Germany had attacked Poland, starting World War II. Many tests were conducted until 1942. They were struggling to fly the rocket vertically and stably. You would never want this to come down on you. After the rocket fell, they were examining where they made mistakes one by one. Finally, after many trials and errors, they had made a rocket that could work stably. The launch took place on October 3rd, 1942, and the missile managed to go up to about 55.93 miles. This was the first rocket to reach space. This is a video recording taken in 1946. You are currently witnessing a historic event. Despite its low resolution, this video recording taken for testing purposes was the first image of the world taken from space. Hitler was officially mesmerized as he watched this recording, just like you are now. October 3rd, 1942 was the start date of a new era in transportation, the beginning of space travel. Hitler wanted the V2S to be equipped with larger warheads. He wanted the destruction to be more widespread. But the launch he watched was only one of the successful flights. Also, changing the warhead meant new test flights. On top of all this, there was another terrible development. The British had photographed the secret V2 rocket site. This is the picture taken by the British spies. The V2 test site is located in the corner. In August 1943, many facilities, including the V2, were bombarded by the British. This had disrupted all the Germans' plans. But all the information about the V2 was safe. An abandoned mine in the interior of Germany, Mittelwerk, could be used for the production of V2C. This mine was so large that the tunnels inside extended up to 6.83 miles. V2S began to be mass-produced in this secret underground mine in early 1944. Initially, there were 50 per month as the war against Germany progressed. The Russians were coming from the east and the British from the west. Hitler wanted at least 800 of these rockets to be produced per month. The production was unattainable for the prisoners working in the mine. When they tried to produce the rockets quickly, the assemblies were poorly made and many V2 rockets were produced defective. Upon this, SS officers committed a massacre in the mine and many prisoners lost their lives. SS officers were intolerant of errors. Hitler's desires were always fulfilled, even when seemingly impossible. In September 1944, V2 rockets were successfully launched to England and caused great damage. Some settlements were completely destroyed. Had been September. More than 3,000 V2 rockets had hit mainly London, as well as Belgium, France, and the Netherlands, within 6 months from September. The Americans were trembling at the possibility that Hitler could develop a rocket that could reach America. They were shaking. However, Germany had lost World War II and surrendered along with all its troops. Thus the project was shelved. After the war, von Braun took all his plans and fled to Bavaria. He then decided to surrender to the nearby Americans instead of the Russians. He had heard that Russians mistreated prisoners. After the war, many workers and Chief Engineer von Braun, who worked in the V2 rocket program, were brought to America in stormy weather through a secret operation called the Paperclip operation. Von Braun, who worked for the Nazis, would now sweat for America. He was going to design rockets for them. But this time, these rockets were for space travel instead of killing people. Would be used. Von Braun and his team started testing their 2 rockets at the White Sands Missile Test Site in New Mexico. These studies formed the basis of the U.S.'s rocket technology. The launch of Sputnik 1 by the Soviet Union in 1957 caused a great shock in the U.S. In response to this development, the U.S. established National Aeronautics and Space Administration in 1958, and in 1960, Von Braun and his team were transferred to National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Meanwhile, the Russians were achieving incredible successes, similar to launching the first satellite, the inaugural live broadcast, and the maiden crewed mission. But after a while, they failed in their steps towards manned flights to the moon. They were somehow unable to overcome this problem. Von Braun, on the other hand, had developed the Saturn V, and somehow, in 1969, American astronauts had managed to land on the moon. America's dubious moon mission was finally completed. Kennedy had kept his word. Ironically, Nazi member Von Braun, who caused the death of thousands of people, was hailed as a hero in America and said the following:
"For your continued support back with the new space station. I will return perhaps one day on Mars. I will find one. Thank you."
So was America really the winner of the Cold War era? Or did America pull off the world's biggest deception? Watch the video I'll upload soon.